1 year ago, I walked into science research class being scared for my life. I was surrounded by juniors and seniors. My teacher literally looked at me and said, "Don't worry, you probably have no idea what everyone is doing right now, but that's okay, it's part of the process." Everyone wants to be the queen, but no one wants to be the pawn. You can't possibly skip the pawn stage because that's the stage where you build the foundation to ultimately build something way more impressive. Sometimes we scroll through our phones and see this kid our age already having built a company or wrote a full-on research paper or got this internship at this random place. And it literally feels like they just woke up one random day and chose to be the queen while we're here every day being the pawns. But that's not how it works because what you're seeing is someone else's highlight reel, something that they chose to post. And what you're not seeing is years of being the person who knew the least in the room. I know this because I was an immigrant kid who had to go through this more than once. You move to a new country, you don't understand the language or the traditions, and all of a sudden it feels like you're starting over, all over again. If you're also a first gen immigrant like me, then you probably also feel this pressure of your parents and how like they almost sacrificed their lives in order to give you a better one. And maybe when you look at your classmates or the people around you who already seem to secure these internships or this job, got this award, or whatever it may be, then it's easy to compare yourself to them when maybe you're just still trying to figure everything out. And the truth is that feeling doesn't necessarily mean you're behind because the reality is everyone has their own timeline of their own life. Someone else may be ahead of you just because their timeline is different from yours. And whatever it may be that you want to achieve, it's just maybe more further down the road than you realize. Everyone wants to be the founder, the person with the award, but no one really wants to be the pawn or the one who's just learning everything in the beginning. And I think that's exactly the problem because being the pawn during that initial stage is one of the most important, if not the most important stage that someone can be in order to become a better version of themselves. Essentially, the pawn stage is just this period where you are essentially the most inexperienced in the room. You're constantly trying to catch up with everyone else. It feels like they already know what they're talking about and you have to still study everything. But if you think about it, being a pawn is simply just a position, right? In chess, pawns move slow and they start at the bottom, but they're the only pieces that can actually become something else just by staying in the right place for long enough. So you show up every day, move one square at a time, and prove that you deserve to be on the board. The reality of doing this over a sustained period of time, it goes so much more beyond just being more disciplined and having better mindset, but also it comes down to the relationships that you're able to build when you're humble enough, when you're brave enough to ask, and the new opportunities you may get once you secure those relationships. For me, my pawn stage would have had to been when I first came here to the US when I was just 5 years old. And I remember that first day of my first grade class. Everyone was just there, already felt like they knew each other, and I was just sitting there having no clue what was going on. It felt like everyone was moving at the speed of an airplane, and I was there driving a car at like 5 miles per hour. But then over time, because I was so surrounded by this environment, I eventually grew to adapt to my surroundings and learn English just like everyone else. And yeah, I think I was able to adapt to it pretty well over time. If you made it this far into the video and you think all I'm going to talk about is just the pawn stage, the beginning process and phase of becoming a better version of yourself, that's not necessarily true because I want to add one more aspect into this. So I know what you're thinking. You know that some people can also just start off as queens, right? They may just happen to have the right connections or the natural talent, or they're just born into a better off family. And maybe you look at them and think, oh, I don't have that sort of privilege, so this doesn't apply to me. But that's not the whole story, because even if the people who seem like they just started off so well, I can bet you that they've experienced hardships, and obstacles along their own timeline of their life. Now, when I think back to the first day I walked into that science research lab, I feel like the person I am now is completely different from the person who just walked into that room. The largest realization for me has been that when I feel imposter syndrome, wherever it is, it's largely just because whatever the thing you're about to do is bringing you anxiety, or it's something you've never experienced before. But once you like truly go through the experience for however long period of time it takes, when you look back, you realize that that imposter syndrome, it only lasted for the initial moments, right? Like in the end, reflect on yourself, that feeling is no longer there. And that goes to show how much you've changed. So if you're feeling like you're in the pawn stage or the beginner stage right now, then I want you to know that you're not behind at all. It's just that everyone moves at their own pace. Everyone has their own timeline of their own life that they have to follow. And if you just go with it for a long enough time, then you realize that the things that you truly want to accomplish aren't really that far away. So I hope this video was able to provide you some value, and if it did, then please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.